Happy Friday, and welcome here to another edition of Husker Online Headlines. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple. As we are here every week on Friday, we break down the top storylines, headlines, not only around Husker athletics, but around college athletics, even around life. We'll hit on a few other fun topics from now and again. But today, Steve, a big day for headlines around Nebraska football recruiting, around the in-state. The Huskers get two enormous in-state recruits simultaneously done on a live Instagram feed. Wide receivers Isaiah McMorris and Davon Hall from Bellevue West made it official to Nebraska. Hayes Fawcett from On3 made an awesome graphic as well for them, kind of highlighting the announcement. And you see the graphic there, the Hayes. I mean, isn't that awesome, that graphic he put together?
Yeah.
And they were down in Lincoln on Thursday night for a photo shoot. So, I mean, the cat was kind of out of the bag. All these recruits were down here Thursday night, but what a boom for Matt Rule, Garrett McGuire, in-state recruiting, year one of a head coach, to lock up Davon Hall, Isaiah McMorris, when it didn't really feel like this was a possibility not that long ago.
Not that long ago. Give me a timeline on that.
About a month ago, about 6 weeks ago.
Yeah.
I think things were in play with McMorris, but it was kind of at a stop with Davon Hall. In fact, his official visit this weekend was not going to happen. And then all of a sudden, things took a turn this past weekend. About a week ago from today, Davon Hall's dad was at camp with his younger son. And I think over that period on Friday, he was able to talk to Matt Rule, and then Mike Huffman got involved. And then a lot of things happened over the last few days.
Davon Hall is the 75th. Oh, excuse me. He's the 60th ranked recruit in the nation, according to On3.
Receiver.
I'm sorry. 60th ranked receiver recruit in the nation, 4 stars. Isaiah McMorris is the 75th ranked receiver recruit. He's a 3-star player. Both of them had big time offers. McMorris had OU and Penn State, USC. Davon Hall at Arkansas and Kansas State, and he got an offer from Tennessee. I think
A&M was involved with Davon Hall.
I think you look at this class different right away now. Not it's not that these are 5-star players, but they're good players and they're in-state players and they're the kind of players Rule needs. If only to kind of galvanize the fan base. I think it was important.
Yeah, and I think the best way to say it is you need some names to hang your hat on in a recruiting class. And no knock on Roger Gradney or McGahee or Ian
Buford.
Flynn but those are guys, are good players. But nobody in Broken Bow was talking about them.
Right.
I guarantee in Broken Bow today they're talking about these guys going to Nebraska.
I think so.
And shout out to Broken Bow. I'll take some beer from Kincaidor, by the way. I think they're located in Broken Bow.
Is that right? I didn't know that.
But I think you need names like this to hang your hat on, to build a class, give it some leadership, some local presence.
Yeah.
And it's already made an impact. I mean, you're seeing Daniel Kalin talking and spending time with Carter Nelson at length. And we'll talk more about Carter in our next headline. But think about Bellevue West, though. About a month or two ago, all 3 of these guys weren't going to go there. Quarterback Daniel Kalin, wide receivers Isaiah McMorris, Davon Hall. Now they're all going to Nebraska. What a turn of events. And I wanted to share just a couple numbers with you, Sip, on the Bellevue West program. Bellevue West, since 2015, has placed 13 receivers, tight ends, and running backs at the Division I and FCS level. You could make the case that Bellevue West now, when you just look at the wide receiver since 2017 alone, they've had 8 players sign Power 5 over that period. But the number of wide receivers they've had is 8 wide receivers go D1 since 2015. Omaha Central used to be IBAC high in the 80s and the 90s. Is Bellevue West far and away now Nebraska's wideout high?
Well, they're an air raid offense. They do throw it around a lot. It's a different – Daniel Kalin talked to me about this the other day. He's heading into a different sort of offense at Nebraska, more of a pro-style attack where they want to get downhill in the running game. Bellevue West is not really like that. It's an air raid. It's an air raid offense. That's what it is. They sling it around. So it'll prepare Daniel very well because, Huffman, Sean, asked Kalin to do a lot. He asked a lot of his quarterbacks to do a lot at the line of scrimmage, set the protection at the line, choose the direction in the run game, the whole, the gamut. And these receivers will be well prepared. I mean, Isaiah McMorris caught 90 balls last season, 90.
Which was a state record for receptions, and he was 67 yards off of the receiving yards record. And that was his very first year at Bellevue West. His first 2 years he played at Miller North. So he's also won, Steve, 3 state basketball titles in a row.
It's pretty good. So yeah, McMorris played at Miller North, which was more of a ground-oriented offense.
He was there for hoops. I mean, that was one of the main reasons he was there, right?
Yep. And then he transferred over to Bellevue West. Davon Hall, 62 catches last season, 62 catches, 974 yards. By the way, McMorris is a 10.65 100 meters guy, and Hall is a 10.62. That's good. Those are good numbers.
And Hall is a 6'10 PR in the high jump.
Yeah, that's a good number.
And he was clocked at 22 miles per hour at the Tennessee camp. So these are kids that have verified speed on the track, verified offers. There was a time where McMorris could have committed to Oklahoma. He had a committable path to Oklahoma, held out. USC was heavily involved, very close to kind of giving him the green light. You look at Hall, Tennessee, if they offered him about 4 days earlier, he's probably a volunteer.
Yeah. Well, he's not, and that's big, and it's fun. It's fun. You know what? The thing I keep thinking about, this is fun for Bellevue West. It'll be fun to follow Bellevue West this year with those 2 guys catching balls from Daniel Kalen, three, future Huskers. And, they have a Caprice Keith, who's a player Nebraska's, I think, looking at, and Jermaine Green, who's a sophomore to be receiver, who Huffman says is kind of on that Xavier.
He ran 10.9 as a freshman.
Yeah, 10.99. It's kind of a Xavier Betts type trajectory. So yeah, I think it's fun. I mean, Huffman is he's a fun guy to talk to. We'll be talking to him a lot.
All right, let's go on. Headline number 2. It's a big recruiting weekend, a lot going on.
Yes.
Headlined by Carter Nelson, but I do want to get into Grant Bricks too. But headline number 2, can Nebraska close the deal on Carter Nelson this weekend? There are a lot of promising clues, I guess you could say. Number 1, I'll start with Memorial Day weekend. Daniel Kalen and Carter Nelson spent time together in Lincoln. They keep regular communication. This past week, Daniel Kalen and Carter Nelson have been together all week in Omaha. They went to the College World Series together. They were in Lincoln on Thursday night. They'll be in Lincoln all weekend with Davon and Isaiah McMorris. This is fresh off Georgia, Penn State, and Notre Dame. His 3 visits he's taken before Nebraska. Are these relationships enough to help Matt Rule close the deal on Carter Nelson?
Well, Nelson, the reason you got to start off with the fact he's a top-rated player in the state. And there is, there's some pressure to get him, right? Of course there is. There should be some pressure on the tight ends coach to get this kid locked down. This is the kind of, not just because he's the number 1 player in the state. Georgia is setting aside a spot for him. And I think when we went to Ainsworth to visit with him, you could tell it wasn't going to be easy for Nebraska. That this wasn't a gimme. This was not going to be a gimme putt. That you could tell from his answers that this was something that he was going to think through. Carter Nelson. What we went up there in January, correct?
Yeah, January, right as things kind of took off.
Right, but it was immediately
February.
It might have been February. It was the winter.
It was February.
There's about 12 inches of snow up there. But I think you came away with it from it the same way I did. He was very guarded, right? It was just very clear that he didn't want to say too much about anything. He's very affable, but he chose his words very carefully. He was really good at it. Like he was coached through it. I don't know if he was or not. He just might be very intelligent, which, by the way, is a good sign. He's an intelligent kid.
There's just a lot of things that I think Nebraska has an advantage. Well, number 1, obviously, these relationships with the guys I talked about. Does he have those kind of relationships with the other recruiting classes? I don't know that, but I would not think so. the distance. Just thinking about if his family ever wanted to see him play, it'd be very difficult where they live in Ainsworth to get to a lot of these places regularly.
To Georgia.
He's got a girlfriend, I believe, that's a Wayne State volleyball player.
Okay.
I mean, so there's a lot of factors involved here that helps Nebraska, you know, and can they close it though? That is the key. And I think Matt Rule understands what this would mean. I think this would give them another bell cow. It would be by far their highest ranked recruit in the class to get him. And it would boost their class up 2 or 3 or 4 spots. Right now, today, they went from 30 to 22 with these commits today.
Right. So it'd be important right out of the gate. Then you just got to kind of see what kind of football player he evolves into. But right out of the gate, it'd be important for the program. I mean, I know sometimes as sports writers, we just say the blatantly obvious things, but it would be. And it's something to watch very closely.
Yeah, and then I want to bring up Grant Bricks from Logan Magnolia High School in Logan, Iowa. He just visited Alabama on an official visit, not a camp workout or unofficial. Gets an offer from Nick Saban in his office after the visit's over. So Alabama offers Western Iowa native Logan Magnolia. Isn't it amazing? You got an Iowa offensive lineman that the Hawkeyes aren't even in the picture with, and Alabama is in the picture with Nebraska. Now, Kansas State is the perceived leader right now, and the RPM, I think, is fairly accurate at this moment. He's made by far the most visits to any school to Kansas State. He wants to major in agricultural studies, and Kansas State's a great place for that. Nebraska would be a great place for that. Alabama showed him a plan to kind of lay down that idea. I think the thought is he's going to stay closer to home. I think today it's probably more a K-State versus Nebraska battle, but the Alabama offer should get your attention.
Yeah, I mean, this is fun, Sean. Top-rated player in Nebraska here this weekend, top-rated player in Iowa here this weekend. So let's see who can win that battle.
Nebraska's at 17 commits, though, right now. And,
17.
I think it's fairly foreseeable that they'll be over 20 by the weekend's end. I don't know.
By weekend's end?
Because the dead period. And these
kids can commit during the dead period.
Everyone has this. Yeah, they can.
Yeah.
But coaches kind of squeeze it out. I mean, everyone has this fantasy of recruiting that they want to hold it out as long as they can or take it deep. The process doesn't really allow you to go very deep because of the spots and the transfer portal and the dead period and the visits.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got to be pretty special to hold it out all the way.
Yeah. Oh, that's an interesting point, Sean.
It's like going out with your family on a Friday night and you could get a reservation at a nice restaurant, an open table, but you don't want to take it because you're holding out for that other restaurant.
Yeah.
Hoping that maybe you can slip in that restaurant.
Kind of a risky move.
And you might get a table. You might get a seat at the bar. But by the way,
that was a good one.
Always take a seat at the bar. That's
really?
If you're by yourself, for sure.
Okay. Yeah, if you're by yourself, that's kind of a big if.
That's what I did in College Station.
Really?
When I left you and Greg when we got in about 9:30.
Oh, you just went to the bar.
Went to the Republican Steakhouse and sat at the bar. The Republic.
The Republic. So that's what you did. You just took a seat
at the bar and watched.
And they served you.
And watched an A&M baseball game.
Yeah, and they'll serve you there. I've pondered doing that. There's been times where I thought on a whim, I want a steak. And I just thought about going into Outback and sitting at the bar.
That's the way to do it. Go to Misty's, Texas Roadhouse, any of these places like Tavern 180. We're going to Tavern 180 tonight, by the way. That should be good.
Oh yeah, you're living a bigger time life than I am.
You'll be at Chili's, or
I think I'm going to a taco food truck at 70th and Havelock is what I'm doing.
And you're in this for the record. Steve's being real. Like
yeah, I am.
This is not like
I'm going to the taco truck at Casey's on 70th and Havelock.
Right, let's go.
And you're going to eat Wagyu steak. I got to change up my life a little bit, Sean.
Headline number 3: CBS Sports has Nebraska right now going the over. The over/under win totals right now, is 6. They had Nebraska this week at 7. They laid out the wins.
Tom Fornelli. So here's the deal, Sean. Tom Fornelli, CBS Sports, went through every team. And I think it was Caesars that sets the over-unders. And they set Nebraska's at 6. Fornelli, who's been doing this, he does this all the time, Sean, every summer I can remember. He set Nebraska at over. And if you dispute it, I would say to you or anybody, just look at the wins that he picked.
He's got him going 6-1 at home.
Yeah.
With the Michigan game being a loss, he's got him winning at Colorado. So 1 road win, 1 home loss. Losses on the road at Michigan State, Illinois, Minnesota, Wisconsin. And I think Michigan State's a winnable road game.
Yeah, I do too.
And I think Minnesota, I mean, just the unknown elements, they could win the opener. It's not.
Do it this way for the listeners. Here's what I'd say. Here's the wins he projects. 7. CU, which, come on, they should, right? Northern Illinois was 3-9 last year. Louisiana Tech, 3-9 last year. Iowa in Lincoln, just beat them in Iowa City. Maryland, that's tough. I mean, that's
the time. They get great timing, though.
Yes, great, because they played Penn State the week before. Right. Northwestern. Now, beat you last year, but Northwestern was Nebraska in 11 last year. Okay. Then Purdue, which won 8 last year.
But lost everybody.
Right. Won 8 last season, was 6-3 in the Big Ten and won the West. Projected to win 4. No, they set the number at 5. And Fernelli picks under. I think he did anyway. Let me double. No, he projects over. Excuse me. But they only project 5 for Purdue. So, yeah, I think if you just look at it that way, if you look at those 7 games, you'd think Nebraska has a very good chance to win those games.
I noticed, though, like on a lot of his Big Ten picks, he has the over on several teams. So it's like you can't have everybody be the over.
I thought the same thing.
I kind of like, wait a minute, who are the like? If you're
well, he has not. Interestingly, he has Minnesota under at 7.
So he has him going 6-6.
Yeah, he has him going 6-6.
But he had Iowa over, Wisconsin. Did he have Wisconsin over?
He had Wisconsin over at 8.5.
Like, what are we going off of on Wisconsin here? Like, that was one of the worst Wisconsin teams that we've seen since Nebraska joined the Big Ten last year.
You're going off Braylon Allen, and you're going off
the QB transfers.
Yeah, Mordecai. They have Mordecai at quarterback now, and you're going off defense.
Will that offense work though in this league when it gets cold?
More of a spread offense. They'll keep running it. It'll just be a different kind of alignment.
Yeah, no, he'll adjust. Luke Fickell's a Big Ten guy.
They'll run it.
I just
to answer your question, who was under? Rutgers, the number's 4. He had him under.
Northwestern was under.
Northwestern at 3.5. He had him under. Okay. He had Minnesota under. And he had Indiana at 4 under. That's it for Tom Allen, then, if that's right. That'll be it.
What about Fitzgerald?
Well, what if he goes under 3.5?
2-10. Let's go 2-10.
Yeah, so that would be 3 straight years of fewer than 3 wins. 3 or fewer. I
don't think he'd ever get fired there. I think
he might leave.
Kind of a diplomatic exit.
Yeah. That might be what you're looking at there.
Maybe moving into a different role. I don't know. I mean,
how if you're a Northwestern fan, how would you stomach 3 straight seasons of 3 or fewer wins?
The portal era has just killed them.
Right.
Like, you can't just transfer to Northwestern. Mm-mm. Like, JUCO guys obviously can't go to Northwestern based on their academic admissions. And if you're a transfer to go there, you've got to meet the standards. So in this portal era, they'll lose guys and they can't really replace them.
Same with Stanford. Those schools,
and Vandy.
Yeah, those schools are interesting. I hope people understand, Sean. I was talking to the Colorado beat writer yesterday. I hope people understand how much different the worlds are at Northwestern and Stanford and Vandy, I guess. Like Stanford has one writer that covers them full time, and he's a freelancer. Okay, put that in perspective.
For like the Chronicle or the San Jose paper,
San Jose Mercury News has a freelancer as their beat writer, and he's the only full time. I know this because the Colorado writer called me yesterday. He was calling all the opponent writers, and he said, "Yeah, it was kind of hard to do Stanford because they don't really have anybody that covers them full time,
like an expert." And isn't there do they have a play-by-play guy?
Well, sure, they have a play-by-play guy, but Northwestern, as you know, it's a similar situation. They really don't have much media covering them.
No, it's Louis Bakir.
Yeah.
And then that's it. I mean,
see how different that is than a place like this. I mean, it's incredible. It's incredible, the difference. The Pac-12, there's a lot of that. The Pac-12 just doesn't generate as much interest. A lot of those schools. I mean, obviously Washington does and Oregon does, but But after that, Sean, how many? I mean, how many?
And USC and UCLA left the
right.
conference.
Exactly.
Colorado right now, I mean, there's a lot of people covering that team remotely. You know, there's a lot of remote Deion Sanders coverage, but not a lot of boots on the ground in Boulder.
No. We're in a pretty unique situation. But the Big Ten, other than Northwestern, for instance, that writer in Colorado was struck by just the interest level in the Big Ten compared to the Pac-12. Just the overall stadiums full, just week-to-week interest. I mean, we should never take it for granted, Sean.
God, what's going to happen? I mean, the Pac-12 situation is so bizarre right now because they keep like delaying the release of the media rights deal, which to me is obvious why, because it's going to be so poor.
Well, and that's kind of why I brought this up, because it all goes hand in hand, right? I mean, these schools that don't have much coverage, the stadiums aren't full,
media rights
close.
deals.
The people just don't. Football's not as big in that culture, in that world that it is in ours, and that it is in the Big Ten. Again, yeah, Washington is big, Oregon it's big, USC it's pretty big. UCLA, you went to a game at UCLA where Nebraska played. What the stands look like to you, Sean? There's hardly anybody there.
Well, think about like our show. We're going to get 15, 20,000 views, downloads on this show.
Yeah.
If we were doing this at Stanford,
oh God,
we'd be lucky
700
to get. I mean, lucky.
Yeah.
And look at the population here, and look at the population there.
That's intense here. It's not intense there.
Yeah, it's that will be the Pac-12 media rights thing. Though I'm fascinated because I do think it's going to come to a head here.
Has to,
like this week,
right?
June 30th is coming up, and the San Diego State thing is going to like kind of.
What are you talking about?
They gave their notice to the Mountain West, and
They're
they
out.
wanted a 1 month extension.
To
like let things play out. And they said no. So June 30th, they're out
of the Mountain West.
That's their notice, and they have to pay $17 million. And if you waited, it would double.
Man,
so like they had to make it and the Mountain West is playing a little hardball here too, knowing kind of what's going on. But like if you're the Mountain West, like what if the Pac-12 implodes? Then all of a sudden the Mountain West becomes the Pac-12,
right? Yeah,
I mean, there's a lot of
curious decision by San Diego State, actually.
Well, they could go to the Big 12 too.
Yeah, they hope. I mean,
they could go to the Big 12.
Could they?
I mean, look at their basketball team.
Yeah, they're and that would fit.
And then the Big 12 wants Gonzaga for basketball. I mean, there's a lot of things for the Big 12 all of a sudden has become attractive for a lot, like Arizona.
And they got a good television.
Colorado.
Deal. Their television deal is excellent.
Now, Arizona has like an outside. I mean, I'm not saying this is going to happen, but they think that they can be in the discussion for the Big 10 because they're an AAU institution.
Yeah.
I mean, Oregon and Washington to me are, I don't want to say foregone conclusions, but
I wouldn't say that.
I would be more surprised if they're not in the Big 10. Like, I just think
that's a good way to put
it. That's going to happen. Like, I think it's going to happen at some point or another. But all right, let's move it on. Headline number 4.
Okay.
Nebraska Chancellor Ted Carter has a new role. It's official. We had talked about this already, Sip. But now he is the grand poobah, not only of the University of Systems, but he oversees all athletics and structurally organizationally.
Well, hold on now. He's not the AD,
but the athletic director reports to him,
right?
Not the chancellor,
right?
So structurally, this is a much different setup than we've ever seen before.
Yeah.
And is it a sustainable long-term model, or is it just because it's Ted Carter that's the model right now? That's the question.
I guess that's the question. Some people would also say, Sean, that not everybody likes this because it's putting a lot of power. Maybe that some would suggest it's putting too. Well, no, they're suggesting that it puts too much power in the hands of Ted Carter, and would maybe distract him from academia. There's always going to be naysayers, but this is about Ted Carter. A better way to put it, with all due respect, is he'll provide policy direction and oversight to Husker athletics. He's not running it day to day. You still have an AD,
but he'll get the seat on the COP, the Council of Chancellor and Presidents.
Yeah.
You get one of those people per school.
That's a powerful position,
and you get to be in those meetings with the Big Ten commissioner and the other COP representatives.
Right now, and I'm just trying to talk in very layman's terms here, so forgive me if it sounds a little crude. There are presidents and chancellors that have never run a mile, never done anything that would resemble sports. They don't know too much about the sporting realm. I'd guarantee you, and this isn't off the top of my head. It's not like I don't talk to people. Ted Carter will be influential with Tony Petitti, the Big Ten commissioner, out of the gate. Petitti will lean on Carter because Carter has a background in athletics.
As you would say, he's a dude.
He's a dude. He has a background in athletics. He was a captain of the U.S. Naval Academy hockey team, which he kind of plays down, but I mean, he was a captain of a hockey team. He's a competitor. He flew 125 combat missions in Iraq and Afghanistan and Kuwait and Bosnia and Kosovo. Top Gun, graduate of the Navy Fighters Weapons School. He's very in tune with the athletic realm. He studies it. I met with him. I mean, I met with him in his office a few weeks ago. He studies this stuff. He knows. I was struck by how much he knows. He knows the nuances of NIL and the transfer portal. He knows come on. How big a factor do you think he was in hiring Matt Rule?
Fairly significant.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'd say
correct me if I'm wrong here, but I'm not sure Ronnie Green had much, if any.
Well, he's on his way out.
And they internally had to know that, right?
I think so. Yeah. So Ted was heavily involved in that. I mean, it's Trev's hire. He's the AD. He has to make it work. Trev has to, at the end of the day, he's responsible. What Ted, now, Sean, you'll understand this completely. What he emphasizes is that you have to have alignment for the sake of football in specific, but also athletics in general. It really helps to have these people in alignment: president, chancellor, AD, coach. At Nebraska, how often has that been the case?
Well, we thought it was the case with Hank Bounds and Bill Moose and Scott Frost.
And I think to a certain extent there was alignment. I think it got misaligned pretty quickly.
Hank Bounds, Ronnie Green, Bill Moose, Scott Frost, like that.
Yeah.
At the very beginning of that era, people said, this is the first time everyone's been aligned.
I think COVID got it out of alignment.
And then I think Moose's leadership style of kind of not being around to lead over COVID.
Right. And I don't think Moose and Frost were aligned. I think it quickly disintegrated between Moose and Frost.
Frost and Jared Lamprick. I mean, they took over the COVID protocols.
And then what happened with Frost in Oklahoma? Frost tried to dip out of the Oklahoma series game. Well, come to find out, Moose was not on board with that. Now that's called misalignment. Okay, your car's out of alignment at that point.
I think Frost was on his own on that. I can tell you others around, no one around him thought that was a good idea.
He did not read the board well.
I think he understood he needed to get some momentum, but that was not the way to go about doing it.
And Bill Moose was adamantly opposed to it, and then took the bullet publicly and said, smoothed it over. God bless him for doing that. It probably took years off his life. Now, back to alignment. The most glaring examples of misalignment at Nebraska that really played a huge part in bringing the program down, that you can credit Harvey Perlman. Because Perlman wasn't in alignment with the head coach at all. He was not in alignment with Frank Solich. He was not in alignment with Bo Pelini.
No, he was in alignment with Bo Pelini at the beginning.
Oh, no, I wouldn't say that.
When Tom Osborne,
no, I don't think he was ever in alignment with him. I don't think he wanted him to succeed. Okay. No, they weren't in alignment. They were never in alignment. You had an AD that was in alignment with Bo. But how do you think Perlman and Osborne were?
I'll say at the beginning, Perlman knew he needed Osborne. He needed him.
That's fair.
He needed him. He needed him to calm the waters in 07 with Steve Peterson. Mm-hmm. He needed him to help hire a football coach.
And then that happened.
Then he needed Osborne and the success of the football program to play a key linchpin to get Nebraska in the Big Ten Conference. He needed Osborne to be able to talk with Jim Delaney and Barry Alvarez.
Yeah.
Like you could say the Grand Spanier and the Jim Delaney and Perlman, but Osborne to me still was so key in the Big Ten move.
But when that all fell into place soon after that,
that's
what
when
happened?
The ball rolled.
Yes. What happened?
So
Osborne was essentially forced out.
Then in 2010, that night at Texas A&M happens.
Right.
Bo Pelini, gets penalized. Nebraska gets penalized. It was like 16-1.
Yeah, and Bo loses his mind.
And had the Martinez episode on the sideline. Mm-hmm. And then on that same next Sunday morning, Chancellor Perlman on his own called the Associated Press's Eric Olson. Mm-hmm. And just went on. I mean,
he kind of dragged Bo through the mud.
That was also the night where like Carl Pelini took that camera from
mm-hmm.
the photographer on the field that was mm-hmm. like taking pictures, and he threw the guy's camera. I mean, that was a bad night.
We've covered generally a mess.
Do you remember that deal with the photographer?
It was a complete mess.
And
I remember it vividly.
They like tried to deny it happened,
right.
But then there was like one of those high field like
screenshot,
and it showed him like taking the camera. It was like,
yep. right.
It was like, that was I don't like to cuss on the air, but that was a S show.
It was. Now, so a classic quote from Ted, or maybe not.
Sorry,
classic.
We got a little off tangent there.
Yeah, classic quote from Ted. Well, maybe not classic, but an important quote. He said, when you have alignment, then culture has a chance. Athletic department culture. If a coach, and he's talking about football coach, if a coach is doing it all on his own, good luck. That's what he said. If and that's what Bo Pelini was doing, all on his own. Do you have support from I-Course at the end? Do you have support from I-Course? Do you have support from Perlman? No, he was doing it all on his own. Good luck.
Well, and then think about how I-Course was hired. Tom Osborne was led to believe he was going to have a hand in naming his successor as athletic
mm-hmm.
director.
Did Frank Solich have support from Perlman?
No.
Did he have support
Peterson?
Perlman was the chancellor. Did he have support from Perlman? No.
Or Peterson.
Did he have support from Peterson? No, none.
Well, think about
he was on his own.
Think about Sean I-Course, Harvey Perlman, and Mike Riley, and then Hank Bounds from his position saw that it was such a bad fit that he stepped in,
right?
And Nick Stout made the decision to get rid of Sean,
right,
and then to get rid of Riley.
I don't like the topic, and I hope people aren't offended that we bring it up. It's important, though, because people ask what happened to Nebraska football. We're talking about what happened to Nebraska football. What led to its demise? Right now, we're talking about what led to its demise. That's what we're talking about.
A lot of people wanting to take the credit for bringing it back.
Well, God only knows what
or other.
I don't know what Harvey Perlman's motivations were, Sean. It's not that simple. I think it's more complicated than that.
I think getting in the Big Ten, though, was a big deal for him. I mean,
yeah. But I think it was academically driven. It wasn't a big football move for him. So he used the football program to get in for academic purposes.
Yeah, and I mean, think about, do they get in the Big Ten without that Ndamukong Suh 09 season?
Maybe not.
I mean, they had their best season since the 01 Rose Bowl season on the 1 year that they were in play to join the Big Ten.
And they're real. I mean, that was a real team.
That was a team that was national championship level. They lost some games early in the year. They had a poor offense, but they could play with anybody in the country. They proved it.
Mm-hmm.
Then that's what they were selling to the Big Ten. This is the program you're going to get.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was a real program.
And then in 2010, it was the same deal. They were that good in 2010. They were ranked in the top 5. Yeah. They've been ranked in the top 5 for a grand total of 1 week since the 2001 Rose Bowl. It was during the 2010 season. Think about that.
And you look at the guys they had dudes. I mean,
think about that secondary in 2010.
Amir Abdullah.
And you had Levante David on that team.
Yeah, we had serious dudes.
All right, let's final headline. Headline number 5. It is the dead period starting on Monday. So this is the final weekend. What's going to go on? What's next for Nebraska? And you look at the NCAA recruiting calendar. The whole entire month of July is dead. Then it opens back up at the very end, or there's a 7-day period that you're allowed to host visitors. So you can technically bring in a few more visitors at the end of the month, but for the foreseeable future, there's going to be a month of nothing, no recruits, no visitors. So this is when, if you're Matt Rule, you say, Coach, go to Florida with your family, go golfing, Coach Satterfield, go fishing, whatever you want to do, get out of here for a month. You guys need this. You think about a college football coach and the schedule they live. February is a dead month, but then March, recruiting, April, recruiting, spring recruiting, May, spring recruiting, June, camps, recruiting, visitors. Here we are now.
Yep. Now, some of those guys, there's phone calls that are allowed, right?
Yeah, there's phone calls allowed anywhere.
Yeah, and that I've talked to enough coaches over the years that even July, they're taking calls.
But if the spots fill up, Nebraska's at 17.
But you're always looking ahead, 2025. I mean, there's always
kind of. Yeah. But
I know what you're saying. It slows dramatically. All I'm trying to convey is that it never really goes away.
Well, I get when I go on vacation, I work every night still. Right. Like I don't go on vacation.
Yeah, Matt Rule,
I understand.
Right. Matt Rule did though. I mean, he looks forward to some downtime. He should. God, I mean, I would counsel him. You need it. I mean, you got to have it.
They've hosted roughly 35 plus official visitors after this weekend. You get 56. So they have about 20 and change
for the season,
for the transfer portal too, not just the season.
Ooh, really?
Yeah. So
really, you got to pick those.
But if you have 20 some commits or 19 to 22, let's just say a range, then you're pretty selective on who's coming in the season.
Yeah. And
then the transfer portal is what you focus on in December.
You know what, Sean? That's organization, because we've seen it too often here. Now I'm going back to the Solich years and the Pelini years where it was a scramble. Remember? Are you with me?
Oh yeah.
It was a scramble that they didn't get enough done going into the season. And then you're trying to hold on to your job. You're trying to save your job and save the class. I just thought it was too much. Get it in place now. Now you can. It's easier to get it in place now because June's so important.
Well, the June visitors have changed it too.
Right.
June official visits didn't start happening until the 2018 cycle. But you think about what recruiting is now. We lived it when all these recruits came up here in March and April. You're trying to get all your key guys here, even in January, if you can get them here in January. But for Nebraska, they've got to get guys here in March and April. And then you got to get them back in June, and you got to lock them up in June. Yeah. I mean, then you go dead. And then during the regular season, you might bring in guys for official visitors, but you're talking younger guys coming in now for unofficials.
Yep. So there's the calendar.
So it's the dead period. And Matt Rule, we talked to him about this. He wants those guys out of there. Yeah. He wants the team to not have the presence of the coaches there all summer.
July is critical for leadership among the players. That becomes Reimer's team, and pick an offensive, Turner Corcoran maybe, or Benhart, or it becomes Jeff Sims' team in July. It's the leaders that really have to grab hold of the situation in July because the coaches are gone.
And if I remember right, did he say that they do a retreat with his teams? Like they've done that before, where they do like senior retreats? Or,
I don't know that.
Like
Sean, I
thought he told it, but like he's got a different way of doing leadership things, like with get-togethers, dinners, retreats. And I think it's a senior deal where he takes, he tries to build his team and going to the dorms. I am fascinated by
that's really interesting.
July 30th.
So they will all, for the uninitiated or people that missed it, and Nebraska will be as a team in the dorm starting July 30th, and it'll last almost 2 weeks, if not 2 full weeks. And that means coaches, everybody together in a dorm for 2 weeks.
I wonder if that like falls down all the way to like the equipment staff, or if it's just like
Jay Terry in there,
or like the recruiting staff. You wonder like how deep that goes.
Right. Yeah. I don't know if you just keep it at the core players, core staff. I don't know.
But yeah, that's going to be a fascinating thing. We got Big Ten Media Days later in July. We don't know who's going to that yet, do we?
Nope.
So we'll know that later on. But busy weekend. We'll have lots of recruiting coverage on HuskerOnline.com. Make sure you check us out right now. Get on $9.99 a month, $100 for the year. That's our current offering. Check out HuskerOnline.com. We'll keep you up to date with all of the latest here with the recruiting news. For Steve Sipple, I'm Sean Callahan signing off here for another edition of Husker Online Headlines.